What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from ActionMovieGuy.com, and it's spooky season, but I left the lights on for this one because it's Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I found this with audio description. I'm really excited for it, but I don't want to give you like the misconception. I mean, I could sit there. I could have sat here in the dark and been like, it's Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and done all that again, but sometimes I like to pick films for spooky season for the people who don't like to be scared, but like their horror in other fashion slash. Also, I like to try to find something for like the whole family. You know what I'm saying? That you can watch with the kids. So we're trying to. I'm trying to appeal to everybody with the 31 days of horror. And Tucker and Dale is the fun movie. It's not scary. It's just not. It's gory, but it's not scary. Um, it has some moments where you'll definitely be like, "Ugh." If you're part of the visual crowd here, you're like, oh my god. If you're part of the blind crowd, I'm sorry, but it's on Prime Video and it was TTS, and I apologize, but uh, you know, I got nothing, man. We know what this is like for us. This is just something to Amazon, but it has audio description, so I'm able to talk about Tucker and Dale versus Evil in a way that I can tell you to go watch it with audio if you've been wanting to. It's out there. Question mark. Anyway, for my blind people, I've got purple hat on backwards, black sunglasses, and I'm wearing a Falcon and Winter Soldier t-shirt. So I've seen Tucker and Dale before I lost my vision. I prefer my horror comedies, especially when I could see. I'm not big into gore, but if I'm gonna do it, it's gonna be silly. And I don't mean like silly in like a Terrifier way. That movie just sounds disgusting, but I mean in a Tucker and Dale way, or Cooties is another example. Cabin in the Woods is a good example. Um, Films that are slightly tinged with comedy are the films that I enjoy. I have fun with those. Shaun of the Dead. These are films which I have a review of. Shaun of the Dead on the channel. Hopefully at some point I'll get to review Cooties because I know it has audio description. You just gotta wait for it to land somewhere. Tucker and Dale. It wasn't something that lit the box office on fire. It was sort of like an underrated, underappreciated film, but it found its audience, man. This is the benefit of streaming. It's the benefit of home video is when you put a film out like this, people find it and then they recommend it to their friends. Then those friends recommend it to the friends, and Tucker and Dale eventually has a fan following. I know people who love this film. I know people who have been asking for a sequel, and the original producers have had to like answer that question about like whether or not they would ever do a sequel to Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which they basically have said probably not, but you never know. Like one of those things. Like I don't know, and maybe I think like the cast is open to it. Tyler Labine and Alan Tudyk, mainly in the lead roles here. So what is this film about? Well, this film plays on your tropes. It takes a group of young college age kids who are headed up to the woods for the weekend to rest and relax, like they always are. They're always headed off into the middle of nowhere for no apparent reason whatsoever. And all along the way, they pass two hillbillies who are to them just like, oh, these hillbillies, these flannel wearing rednecks, just not good. Like they never are in the film, except these two are Tucker and Dale, and they wouldn't harm a fly. You know what I'm saying? And they're really excited. Tucker and Dale are really excited because they bought like a vacation property up here, and they're headed up to the vacation property. And there's I love when they see the house for the first time. They're like, "Oh my god!" it's a fixer-upper, and I love it. It's just like everything about this film. Tucker and Dale are excellent. Just everything. Just I love the juxtaposition of how they find ways of how Tucker and Dale perceive a situation, and then how the kids perceive a situation. Like they just constantly see these two as being like murderers or like like crazed serial killers. Like it's like these kids just immediately think they're in like wrong turn, but they're not. Um, so something happens, and one of the girls, one of the teens, ends up getting hurt. Played by Katrina Bowden, who you might remember from 30 Rock. She ends up getting hurt, and Tucker and Dale take her and sort of like nurse her back and take her into the cottage. And of course, this is perceived as the hillbillies have taken our friend, you know. So the college kids regroup, and they're figuring out how do they. Oh no, we have to. What awful things could they be doing to her in there? And they're like playing board games. They're just the Tucker and Dale don't think anything bad is happening or that anybody thinks that they are bad people. So they're just kind of like waiting for like their friends to come get her, or for her to feel up to, I guess, being able to leave, because she suffered like a head, like sort of like a concussion or whatever. Like anyway, so it, it's just sort of like a hilarious set of events, and slowly what ends up happening is they find themselves in situations where slowly members of her group of friends, her circle of friends, end up getting knocked off one by one, but in ways that would seem like Tucker and Dale had something to do with it, but really had nothing to do with it. Like, just all circumstantial deaths. Like one guy is running away from them and ends up getting himself impaled. Like he just doesn't see where he's running and he impales himself. Uh, but, uh, you know, another person dives into like a wood chipper, which is hilarious. But, you know, there's something about the way how this film handles it versus the way that like Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey handles it, where you have like somebody who's like creeping around a wood chipper, and you're like, okay, so obviously we're going to be using this, like why else would this be here? Um, but then there's the other way, which is just like, oh, maybe I'll hide in here, like I don't know. It's just one way is played for like sort of like semi-serious, and you're supposed to laugh at it because it's really bad, I guess. And then the other one is it's silly, and it's just dumb funny. So yeah, it's and then Tucker and Dale is just so they end up having to like kind of uh like from their perspective, the kids are like assaulting their cabin, and they're like there's so many great lines, like, did your friends ever take medication, because I don't think they're on them anymore, they are out there. I love this film. This is so great. This is like taking the characters who you assume. I'm not sure that Tucker and Dale versus Evil needs to be like have a sequel, but I think there are other things that you could do like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, where you take something where somebody like suspects that there's a villain, but they're actually not. So, and then you just kind of flip it on its head, and you go, play around with that. I feel like this is a concept that is ripe for uh, more things where you're like, ooh, that's like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, but it's not Tucker and Dale. Like we did that. Really, the only thing I could ever think of for like a sequel development would be them playing up on the evil possessed child trope, where we always have like the evil children. I feel like if Tucker and Dale were to have quote unquote evil children, I feel like that would be really the only place that they could go if they were suddenly like spoofing all of the like Rosemary's Babies, the Omens, Orphans, you know what I'm saying? Like all those films. Um, I feel like maybe that's really the only place that they could really go. It's hard because they're still going to be hillbillies, so it's like how do you make fun of them? How do you make fun of the situation? How do you make fun of the horror movie tropes? And it's kind of limited. So, but I love Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Yes, it's a TTS track. So there's only just so much praise I'm ever gonna give to this thing, because, um, so I will say I've heard worse coming on Amazon. What's funny about Amazon's TTS is even its TTS has range. I've also heard better, to be totally honest. This is very mid for them. If we take their TTS and just sort of separate it from the rest of the audio description and just take it as like its own thing, they have better audio description where they've sort of started developing voices that sound just a little more human. And then you have this that sounds like, well, that's it, but it's well put together, and you don't have nobody's talking on top of people. It's not written weird where the people are reading off weird shit. I had a friend that finally saw Terminator on Amazon with the TDS track. It's hilariously terrible. It's one of the worst tracks. And it's on such like a prominent film. It's fucking just disgusting. It's so bad. Anyway, and like it talks on top of dialogue, and just I don't know. I have so many problems with that. So I absolutely have heard, and I've even the description, like when it's a film that I've seen before, and I'm like, this description isn't even very good. This I felt like was pretty good. That doesn't really like lean into the gore, but then again, I don't know. Tucker and Dale is not. You're not really here for the gore. You're kind of here for the silly horror comedy, which, I mean, like you could kind of describe the goriness of what happens. For example, like the wood chipper scene was a little gorier than how they describe it, but at the same time, that's not really the point of this film. They just kind of use it as like an oh my god, these things are happening all around us, and it's not. It's all played for humor. Um, I don't even think for people who seek out gore that Tucker and Dale versus Evil is like on their list. For like for horror fans who are like, oh, I need gore in my life. I don't think Tucker and Dale is up there for them. I think this is for people who don't, who you have your friend who is scared of, you're going on a date or whatever, and the friend's like, I don't like scary movies, but I'd like to see something for Halloween that's like themed, that's sort of, this is a nice way to dip your toes in if you've got one of those who doesn't like scary movies but wants to watch something that makes them feel like that they achieved something for Halloween and is tired of watching Hocus Pocus. Just over it. Or they're ready to graduate up to something that's a little bit more serious. Tucker and Dale, great movie. So if you're somebody who doesn't like your typical horror movies, there's nothing here that's played seriously or remotely like for scares. Everything is played for a laugh. And I liked it. I love it. I love this film. And I embrace it. I keep trying to compile. I want to try, this is sort of like off topic. I wanted to try to compile and have like a list of like my favorite films or the best films of all time and try to get that done by the time I'm 50 and be able to put that out so that people know. And Tucker and Dale versus Evil is a film that I'm always like struggling with. Like I have it on the list and I'm like, I feel like people are going to judge me, but it's like at the same time, I really love this movie, and I love what it does, and I love that when I saw it the first time, I expected nothing, and it gave me everything. Like, I love that part about it, and I love that it still does that for me. I've seen it a couple times now, and even with TTS audio description, it's like, the film was so good, TTS couldn't even ruin it for me. Like, the film, I was so happy that it had audio description so I could qualify it. Like, that's all I cared about. I was like, "Oh, it has something, so great, I can use this for my spooky season. I can finally talk about Tucker and Dale without having to do the whole thing where I'm like, well, this doesn't have audio description. Let's talk about why it should and why this is bad. And oh my god, I can actually just fucking put it in there and be like, it technically legally has audio description. It has the legal requirement of audio description. Yeah. So of course I'm going to give Tucker and Dale versus Evil an A+. It's a desert island film. If I don't take that many horror films to a desert island with me, but if I do, it's Tucker and Dale. They're coming. These two are coming with me. Tyler Labine, Alan Tudyk, two tremendously underrated comedic performances in this film. And I wish more people had seen this film. And I love my horror comedies, and this is probably one of the best, if not one of my if not my favorite. You know, there are a couple others that come really close. Shaun of the Dead might be the one thing where I'm saying, like, is it my favorite? And I'm like, I don't know. There's still Shaun of the Dead. You know, I think Shaun of the Dead kind of takes, but Shaun of the Dead plays more serious. It plays a lot of the horror even more serious than this does. This plays it even less seriously than Shaun of the Dead. So this qualifies more as a comedy than even Shaun of the Dead, which is weird when you think about it. If you've seen Shaun of the Dead, but you haven't seen this, I'm telling you, this is actually more of a comedy than Shaun of the Dead is. So in terms of that balance versus, you know, horror / scary versus comedy, you know. So yeah, I would take Tucker and Dale with me to a desert island, and it would be my Halloween movie of choice. Anyway, I'm so excited to be able to include this spooky season. Even maybe one day it'll have human audio description. Maybe one day, somewhere, Apple, iTunes, anywhere. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side. Next movie is going to be spooky.